The auction house smelled of old wood, expensive cigars, and desperation. I could taste it on my tongue, metallic and bitter, like swallowing pennies. The velvet curtain separating the merchandise from the audience was thick enough to muffle most sounds, but not the low rumble of male voices beyond it, not the occasional bark of laughter that made my stomach clench. I pressed my back against the cold stone wall, my fingers trembling as they smoothed down the white silk dress they'd given me to wear. It was too thin, too revealing, clinging to curves I'd spent most of my life trying to hide beneath oversized sweaters and my father's old jackets. But those days were gone now. Everything was gone, except the debt. "Lot 17, a woman's voice hissed from somewhere to my left. She was one of the handlers, a sharp-faced creature with painted lips and dead eyes. "You're up after the blonde in the corner. Fix your face. No one pays premium for tears." I bit down hard on the inside of my cheek, using the pain to anchor myself. Crying wouldn't help. Crying hadn't helped when the collectors came to our house 3 weeks ago, when they'd shoved my father to his knees in our kitchen and explained exactly what happened to people who borrowed from the Crescent Syndicate and couldn't pay. It hadn't helped when Dad's medication ran out, when I watched him fade a little more each day, his heart condition worsening with the stress. And it certainly wouldn't help me now. The memory surfaced unbidden, Dad's face, gray and drawn, as he held my hand in the hospital. "Don't do this, sweetheart," he'd whispered, his voice barely audible over the beeping monitors. There has to be another way, but there wasn't. The syndicate didn't negotiate. They didn't forgive. They collected one way or another. The choice had been simple, really. Let them take him, or take his place. At least this way, he'd live. At least the money from my contract would cover his surgery, his medication, give him a chance. I told myself that was enough. It had to be enough. "Remember," the handler continued, circling me like a vulture. "Smile, stand straight. These men are paying for the fantasy, not the reality. Give them mystery. Give them innocence." Her laugh was cruel, or whatever's left of it. My hands clenched into fists, nails biting into my palms. The other girls around me, and there were so many, too many, stood in various states of resignation or terror. Some had clearly done this before. They wore their composure like armor, faces blank, eyes distant. Others shook like leaves, makeup smearing as they failed to hold back tears. I wondered what their stories were, what debts, what tragedies, what impossible choices had brought them here. The blonde in the corner was called forward. Through a gap in the curtain, I caught a glimpse of the auction floor. Tiered seating arranged in a semicircle, all focused on a raised platform lit by harsh spotlights. Shadows filled the seats, wealthy men whose faces I couldn't quite see. The auctioneer's voice boomed through the space, professional and detached, as if he were selling livestock instead of lives. 19 years old, excellent health, trained in domestic service. I stopped listening. Bile rose in my throat. This was really happening. In less than 5 minutes, I would stand on that platform. Strange men would examine me, bid on me, decide my worth in cold, hard numbers. And then someone would own me for 5 years, according to the contract. 5 years of servitude, of whatever they demanded, in exchange for the $200,000 that would save my father's life. 5 years. It might as well have been forever. "Lot 17! My body moved on autopilot, legs carrying me forward, even though every instinct screamed to run. The handler grabbed my arm, her grip bruising, and pushed me toward the curtain. "Head up, shoulders back, and for God's sake, stop looking like you're walking to your execution." But wasn't I? The curtain parted. Light blinded me, hot, white, exposing. I stumbled slightly as I stepped onto the platform, my bare feet silent against polished wood. The dress seemed even thinner under the spotlights, and I resisted the urge to cross my arms over my chest. Instead, I did what the handler had instructed. Lifted my chin, straightened my spine, and tried to find a spot on the back wall to focus on. But then, I made the mistake of looking at the audience. Dozens of faces stared back at me, some curious, some bored, some wearing expressions that made my skin crawl. I saw gray hair and expensive suits, gold watches and rings that probably cost more than my father's house, These were powerful men, the kind who shaped the city from behind closed doors, who treated people like commodities and never lost a night's sleep over it. My breathing quickened. The room felt smaller, hotter. Panic clawed at my chest. "Lot 17, the auctioneer announced, his voice echoing through the space. 23 years old, university educated, no prior contracts. Clean medical record, drug-free, excellent physical condition." He paused, consulting his notes. "Bidding starts at 50,000. 50,000. As if I were a used car. 60,000. A voice called from the left side of the room. 75, another countered. They were bidding. Actually bidding. On me. My vision swam, dark spots dancing at the edges. I locked my knees to keep from swaying, focusing on breathing. In through my nose, out through my mouth. Dad needs this. Dad needs you to survive this. 100,000. 125. The numbers climbed higher, and with each increase, the invisible chains around my future grew heavier. I tried to block it out, tried to retreat somewhere deep inside myself, where their voices couldn't reach. It was a trick I'd learned as a child during my mother's worst episodes, before she'd finally left us for good. Disappear inside your own mind, make yourself small and untouchable. But then, a door at the back of the auction house opened. The change in atmosphere was immediate and absolute. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the auctioneer faltered, his practiced patter stumbling to a halt. I felt it before I saw him, a presence that pressed against my skin like static electricity, raising every hair on my body. Someone powerful had just entered the room. I shouldn't have looked. Should have kept my eyes on that safe spot on the back wall, but some instinct, primal and undeniable, pulled my gaze to the doorway. He stood in the entrance, backlit by the hallway lights, and even though I couldn't see his face clearly, I knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that everything had just changed. He was tall, impossibly so, with broad shoulders that filled the doorframe. Dark hair, darker clothes, and an aura of barely contained danger that radiated from him in waves, but it was the way others reacted to him that truly frightened me. The men in the audience didn't just turn to look. They cowered. They shrunk back in their seats, their expressions transforming from arrogance to fear in the space of a heartbeat. Whoever this man was, he made powerful people afraid. He moved forward, his stride purposeful, each step deliberate. The crowd parted before him like water. As he descended the aisle toward the platform, the light finally caught his features, and my breath stopped entirely. Beautiful, terrifying, inhuman. Sharp cheekbones and a strong jaw, lips set in a firm line that suggested he rarely smiled, but it was his eyes that held me frozen. Pale, almost silver in the harsh lighting, and fixed on me with an intensity that felt like being stripped bare. Not in the way the other men had looked at me, hungry and entitled. This was different, searching, as if he could see straight through the silk dress, through skin and bone, directly into my soul. And there was something else, something my rational mind rejected even as my body recognized it. A pull, a magnetic draw that made me want to step toward him, to close the distance between us, even though every logical thought screamed danger. $1 million. His voice cut through the silence like a blade, deep, commanding, with an accent I couldn't place. It wasn't a bid so much as a declaration, a claiming. The auctioneer's mouth fell open. Sir, the current bid is only $1 million, the stranger repeated, each word precise and final. Anyone care to counter? Silence. No one moved. No one even seemed to breathe. His eyes never left mine, and in them, I saw something that terrified me more than anything else that had happened tonight. Recognition. As if he knew me. As if he'd been searching for me. Sold, the auctioneer squeaked, his voice barely audible. Lot 17 sold for $1 million to... But the stranger was already moving toward the platform, already climbing the steps with that same predatory grace. He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that I could smell him, pine and snow and something wild that made no sense in the middle of the city. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice quieter now, but no less powerful. I opened my mouth, closed it. My name felt like the last piece of myself I had left, the final thing that was still mine, but I'd sold everything else, hadn't I? What was one more piece? Elena, I whispered. Something flickered across his face, surprise, satisfaction, gone too quickly to identify. He reached out slowly, giving me time to flinch away, and brushed a strand of pale blonde hair from my face. His fingers were warm, surprisingly gentle. Elena, he repeated, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it, I've been looking for you for a very long time. Before I could process those words, before I could even begin to understand what they meant, he'd already shed his coat and wrapped it around my shoulders. It was massive, swallowing me whole, but it was warm, and it covered me, and suddenly I could breathe again. Come, he said, not a request, but not quite a command either. We're leaving. He turned toward the exit, clearly expecting me to follow, and I did. Because what choice did I have? The contract was signed the moment he'd made that bid. I belonged to him now, this beautiful, terrifying stranger who'd paid a fortune for reasons I couldn't fathom. As we walked through the auction house, past the silent crowd, past the handlers who wouldn't meet my eyes, only one thought cycled through my mind. Who was he? And why did some deep, hidden part of me feel like I was finally going home? The car waiting outside was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Sleek, black, with windows tinted so dark they seemed to swallow light. A driver stood beside it, tall and unnervingly still, his eyes scanning the street with military precision. He opened the door without a word as we approached, his gaze sliding over me once before settling on my companion, with something that looked like relief. Your Majesty, the driver murmured. The title so unexpected, I nearly tripped on the curb. Majesty? The stranger, my owner, I corrected myself bitterly, placed a hand on the small of my back, steadying me. His touch was warm even through the coat, and I hated how my body responded to it, how something inside me seemed to settle at the contact. Get in, he said, not unkindly. I slid into the car, sinking into leather seats that probably cost more than a year of my college tuition. He followed, the door closing behind him with a solid thunk that felt terrifyingly final. The interior smelled like him, that same pine and winter scent that seemed wrong for the middle of summer. As the car pulled away from the auction house, away from that nightmare, I pressed myself against the door, putting as much distance between us as the confined space allowed. My mind raced, trying to piece together what had just happened. $1 million. Majesty. Those silver eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness of the car. You're afraid of me. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Wouldn't you be? His lips twitched, almost a smile. Probably. He shifted, angling his body toward me but making no move to close the distance I'd created. My name is Nathaniel Frost. I am... He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Someone who doesn't typically attend such places, but I had reliable information that I would find something important there tonight. Something, I repeated, the word tasting sour. You mean someone. You mean me. Yes. At least he was honest. I pulled his coat tighter around myself, using it as both shield and comfort. Why? You don't know me. You've never seen me before tonight, haven't I? The way he said it made my skin prickle. I studied his face in the dim light filtering through the tinted windows, the sharp angles, the pale eyes, the air of ancient authority that clung to him. He couldn't be much older than 30. But something about him felt timeless, as if he'd walked the earth far longer than his appearance suggested. The contract, I said, forcing myself to focus on practicalities instead of the impossibilities swirling through my mind. It's for 5 years. What do you expect from me? Nathaniel's expression darkened. That contract is void. I blinked. What? I paid your debt. All of it. The original amount owed to the syndicate, your father's medical expenses, and enough to ensure he never has to worry about money again. He leaned back against his seat, those unsettling eyes never leaving my face. You owe me nothing, Elena. You're free. The words didn't make sense. People didn't pay $1 million just to set someone free. There had to be a catch, a hidden clause, something that would make this make sense. I don't understand, I whispered. I know, and I will explain everything, but not here. Not yet. He gestured toward the window as the city lights blurred past. First, you need rest, food, safety. Then we'll talk. Talk about what? About why you were at that auction. About who you really are. He paused. About who I am. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the car's air conditioning. You're scaring me. Good, he said, but his voice was gentle. Fear will keep you alert, and you'll need to be alert for what comes next. Before I could demand he explain that cryptic statement, the car turned onto a private road I hadn't known existed, passing through gates that opened automatically. We drove through manicured grounds that stretched into darkness, past fountains and gardens that looked like they belonged in a European estate, not in the middle of the city. The house, no, mansion, that emerged from the shadows was overwhelming. Stone and glass, modern architecture blended with old-world grandeur, lit from within by warm lights that made it look almost welcoming. Almost. This is where you live? I asked, unable to keep the disbelief from my voice. One of several places, Nathaniel replied as the car stopped in front of massive wooden doors. But yes, this is home. The driver opened the door, and Nathaniel stepped out, then offered me his hand. I stared at it for a moment. Broad palm, long fingers, a hand that could probably crush mine without effort, before accepting it. His grip was firm but careful, as if I were something fragile he was afraid to break. The moment my feet touched the ground, the front doors opened and a small crowd emerged. 5 people, all of them beautiful in that same unsettling way Nathaniel was. All of them moving with that same predatory grace. They stopped as one when they saw me, their expressions ranging from shock to something that looked almost like reverence. Is it really her? A woman asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She was stunning, with dark skin and braided hair that fell to her waist, wearing clothes that somehow looked both casual and expensive. After all this time? It's her, Nathaniel confirmed, his hand still holding mine. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened fractionally, just enough to keep me beside him. Elena, these are members of my household. Vivian. He nodded toward the woman who'd spoken. My second in command, her mate James, Sebastian and his sister Mira, and that's Cole, my chief of security. They were all staring at me with an intensity that made me want to disappear. The man called Cole, tall, muscular, with scars crossing his arms, stepped forward, his nostrils flaring slightly as if he were smelling me? She doesn't know, he said, his voice a low rumble. She has no idea what she is. Cole. Nathaniel's voice carried a warning. What I am, I echoed, my free hand clutching at the coat still wrapped around me. What are you talking about? What is this? Nathaniel turned to face me fully, his expression serious. Inside. Please, I promise you'll have answers, but not out here in the open. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to refuse, to demand answers now. But where would I go? Back to the auction house? Back to a father who was probably in surgery at this very moment, funded by this stranger's money? I was trapped by circumstance and curiosity in equal measure. I let him lead me inside. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior. High ceilings, artwork that looked original and priceless, furniture that managed to be both elegant and comfortable. But I barely registered any of it. Too focused on the group following us through the halls, their whispered conversations just out of hearing range. Nathaniel guided me to what appeared to be a study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a fireplace that crackled with real flames, and several leather chairs arranged in a circle. He released my hand finally, and I immediately missed the warmth of his touch, which only made me more confused and frightened. Sit, he said, gesturing to one of the chairs. Please. I sat, perching on the edge like a bird ready to take flight. The others filed in, arranging themselves around the room but giving me space, as if they understood how overwhelmed I was. Vivian settled into the chair nearest me, her expression kind, but assessing. "I don't even know where to begin," Nathaniel said, running a hand through his dark hair. For the first time since I'd seen him, he looked uncertain, almost vulnerable. "Try the beginning," I suggested, my voice sharper than intended. "Try explaining why you paid $1 million for someone you claim to have never met. Try explaining why everyone's looking at me like I'm some kind of miracle." My hands were shaking, so I clasped them together in my lap. "Try explaining why I feel like my entire understanding of reality is about to shatter." Nathaniel met my eyes, and in that moment, I saw the weight of centuries in his gaze. Impossible, I told myself. But I couldn't look away. "There are things in this world," he began slowly, "that exist beyond human understanding. Things that hide in plain sight, that have lived alongside humanity since the beginning. Some call us monsters, others call us myths." He paused. "We call ourselves what we are. Wolves." The word hung in the air like smoke. "Wolves," I repeated flatly. "Werewolves, if you want to be specific about it." This came from Sebastian, who leaned against the bookshelf with his arms crossed. "Shapeshifters, creatures of the moon, whatever terminology makes it easier to accept." I laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. "This is insane. You're all insane." "Am I?" Nathaniel asked quietly. And then, right before my eyes, those silver irises began to glow. Actually glow, with an inner light that had nothing to do with reflection. When he smiled, I saw teeth that were slightly too sharp, too predatory to be entirely human. The room tilted. I gripped the arms of the chair, my knuckles white. "Breathe," Vivian urged gently. "I know it's a lot, but breathe." I couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't make my mouth form the word that would make this real. "Werewolves," Nathaniel finished for me. "Yes. And I am what we call an alpha king, the leader of multiple packs, the strongest of our kind in this region. The others here are part of my inner circle, my pack." "This isn't possible," I whispered. But even as I said it, pieces were falling into place. The way they moved, the way others had feared Nathaniel at the auction. The strange pull I'd felt toward him. "This can't be real, and yet it is," Mira said softly. She was petite, with copper-colored hair and kind eyes. "I know how you feel. I was human once, too, before Sebastian turned me to save my life. The transition from not knowing to knowing. It's terrifying, but I'm not—" I stopped, a horrible thought occurring to me. "You're not going to turn me into one of you, are you? Is that why you bought me? Some kind of supernatural conversion?" "No," Nathaniel said firmly. "That's not why I bought you." He moved closer, kneeling in front of my chair so we were at eye level. This close, I could see flecks of blue in those silver eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "Elena, do you believe in destiny? In soulmates?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "I don't know what I believe anymore. In our world, we have something called the mate bond. When a wolf finds their true mate, the one person meant for them, they know. Instantly. Irrevocably." His hand moved slowly toward my face, giving me time to pull away before his fingers gently touched my cheek. "From the moment I entered that auction house, from the second I caught your scent, every instinct I have has been screaming that you're mine, that you're my mate, Elena. The one I've been searching for decades." The word mate should have sounded ridiculous, should have made me laugh or cry or run screaming. Instead, it settled into my chest like a key finding its lock, and I finally understood that pull I'd felt, that inexplicable recognition. "That's impossible," I breathed. But I didn't pull away from his touch, is it? His thumb traced my cheekbone. "Can you honestly tell me you feel nothing? That there isn't something between us that defies explanation?" I couldn't. Because he was right. There was something. A connection I couldn't name, a certainty that made no logical sense. And it terrified me more than anything else that had happened tonight. "I need air," I gasped, pushing up from the chair. I can't. "There's a balcony through those doors," Vivian said quickly, pointing. "Take your time. We'll be here when you're ready." I stumbled toward the glass doors, yanking them open and practically falling onto the stone balcony beyond. The night air hit my face, cool and real, and I gripped the railing as if it were the only solid thing in a world gone mad. Werewolves, mates, destiny. Behind me, through the open doors, I heard Cole's voice. "She's not going to accept this easily." "Would you?" Nathaniel replied. "I just told her everything she thought she knew about the world is wrong. Give her time." "Time is something we might not have," James interjected grimly. "If you found her at that auction, others might have too. The syndicate has connections everywhere. And if they discover what she is to you, they won't." Nathaniel cut him off, his voice hard. "I'll protect her, no matter what it costs." What I was to him, as if I were a possession, a prize, something to be protected and claimed. And maybe that should have angered me, should have made me want to fight back, but all I felt was exhausted, overwhelmed, and strangely safe. For the first time since my father had gotten sick, since our world had collapsed, I felt like maybe, impossibly, everything might somehow be okay. Even if okay now included werewolves and soulmates and a destiny I hadn't asked for. I looked up at the night sky, at stars I could barely see through the city's light pollution, and wondered what the hell I'd gotten myself into. And more importantly, wondered if I'd ever be able to get out. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting sensation of silk sheets against my skin. For one blissful moment, I thought the previous night had been a dream. A stress-induced nightmare born from too much fear and too little sleep. Then I opened my eyes and saw the room. It was easily 3 times the size of my childhood bedroom, decorated in soft grays and creams that should have been calming but instead felt overwhelming. The bed I'd slept in could have fit 4 people comfortably. Through an open door, I glimpsed a bathroom with marble countertops and a tub that looked more like a small pool. Not a dream, then. A new reality. I sat up slowly, my body aching in ways that had nothing to do with physical pain. The events of last night played through my mind in fragments: the auction, Nathaniel's appearance, his impossible revelation, werewolves. He'd claimed to be a werewolf, had claimed I was his mate, and instead of running screaming into the night like any sane person would, I'd let them give me this room, had accepted the nightgown someone had laid out, had crawled into this impossibly comfortable bed and slept like the dead. What did that say about me? A soft knock at the door made me jump. "Elena," Vivian's voice, muffled but recognizable. "May I come in?" I pulled the sheets higher, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt. "Yes." She entered carrying a tray laden with food. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, coffee that smelled like heaven. Her smile was warm as she set it on the bedside table. "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I brought options. How did you sleep?" "Like someone who'd had their entire worldview demolished," I said, then winced at my own bitterness. "Sorry. That wasn't fair to you." "No, it's honest. I appreciate honesty." She settled into a chair near the window, her movements graceful and controlled. In the morning light, she looked even more striking: high cheekbones, intelligent dark eyes, an air of capability that made me trust her instinctively. I know this is overwhelming. If it helps, most of us remember what it was like to learn the truth. That moment when everything you thought you knew gets turned upside down. I reached for the coffee, needing something to do with my hands. "Were you born like this?" "Yes. Most werewolves are born, not made. But some, like Mira, are turned, usually to save their life after a fatal injury. The bite can heal almost anything, but it's not a decision to be made lightly." She paused. "Nathaniel would never turn you without your consent, if that's what you're worried about." It was one of many things I was worried about, but hearing it helped. "What does he expect from me, really?" Vivian's expression grew serious. "That's something you should discuss with him." "But Elena, the mate bond isn't like human relationships. It's not something that can be forced or faked. If you're truly his mate, and I believe you are, I saw how he looked at you, then what he wants is simply for you to be safe, happy, and eventually, to choose him. Choose him. I repeated, as if I have a choice. You always have a choice, Vivian said firmly. The bond creates a connection, yes, an attraction, a pull, but it doesn't control free will. Some wolves have rejected their mates. It's rare and painful for both parties, but it's possible. She leaned forward. Nathaniel has waited a long time for you, longer than you can probably imagine. But he won't force you into anything. That's not who he is. I wanted to believe her. Wanted to trust that these people who seemed so certain I belonged here, that I was something special, weren't just telling me what I wanted to hear, but trust was a luxury I'd learned not to afford. My father, I said, changing the subject before the weight of destiny could crush me entirely. Is he... Did the money? He came through surgery beautifully, Vivian assured me, her smile returning. Nathaniel had his personal physician overseeing everything. Your father is in recovery now, stable and improving. You can call him later if you'd like, though Nathaniel thought it might be best to wait until you're feeling steadier yourself. Relief flooded through me so powerfully, I had to set down the coffee cup before I dropped it. Thank you, I whispered. I don't know how I'll ever repay. You don't owe us anything, Vivian interrupted gently. Nathaniel paid that debt because it was the right thing to do, because you're important to him, to all of us, really. When an alpha finds his mate, the whole pack celebrates. You're family now, Elena, whether you accept the mate bond or not. Family. The word felt foreign. My family had been just Dad and me for so long, and before that, a mother who'd left without looking back. The idea of belonging to something larger, of being welcomed into a group without having to prove myself first, seemed too good to be true, which meant it probably was. There's a closet full of clothes in your size, Vivian continued, standing. Nathaniel had them brought in last night. We guessed at what you might like, so if anything doesn't fit or isn't your style, just let me know. When you're ready, come downstairs. Nathaniel is in meetings this morning, but the rest of us will be around. She left before I could ask what kind of meetings a werewolf alpha king had, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a breakfast I had no appetite for. I forced myself to eat anyway, knowing I'd need the energy for whatever came next. Then I explored the closet Vivian had mentioned, and found it stocked with everything from casual jeans to elegant dresses, all in my size, all in colors that somehow suited me perfectly. It should have been creepy, this stranger knowing so much about me. But instead, it felt like being seen, like someone had paid attention to who I was, not just what they wanted me to be. I chose jeans and a soft sweater, clothes that felt like armor against the strangeness of this new world. Then, with nothing left to delay the inevitable, I made my way downstairs. The house was even more impressive in daylight. I followed the sound of voices to a massive kitchen, where I found Mira and Sebastian cooking what smelled like enough food to feed an army. They looked up as I entered, their faces breaking into identical welcoming smiles. Good morning, Mira said cheerfully. I hope you like pancakes because Sebastian made way too many. I made the exact right amount, Sebastian protested, but he was grinning. He looked less intimidating in daylight, still handsome and powerful, but there was warmth in his eyes that hadn't been visible last night. Elena, right? Sorry about the overwhelming introduction yesterday. We tend to forget how intense we can be to outsiders. I'm still not sure I'm not hallucinating all of this, I admitted, accepting the plate Mira offered me. The pancakes smelled amazing, and despite my earlier lack of appetite, my stomach growled. If you are, it's a very detailed hallucination, Mira said, settling onto a stool beside me. Want to know the really weird part? Once you accept that werewolves exist, everything else gets easier. Vampires? Sure. Witches? Why not? The world is much stranger than humans realize. I nearly choked on my orange juice. There are vampires too? Oh yes, Sebastian said seriously. And they're mostly assholes. Present company excluded, of course. We have a few allies among them, but as a species, assholes. Despite everything, I laughed. It felt good, normal, like maybe I could find my footing in this impossible situation. Mira and Sebastian exchanged satisfied looks, and I realized they'd been deliberately trying to put me at ease. So what happens now? I asked once I'd finished eating. Do I just live here? Does Nathaniel expect me to? I struggled for words. What's the protocol for supernatural soulmates? There is no protocol, Mira assured me. Every bond is different. Some mates know immediately they want to be together. Others take time to build trust and relationship first. Nathaniel will follow your lead, I promise. And in the meantime, Sebastian added, you're under our protection, the Pack's protection, which, given who Nathaniel is, means you're probably one of the safest people in the city right now. Safe. That word again. But safe from what? I opened my mouth to ask when the kitchen door burst open and Cole strode in, his expression grim. We have a problem, he announced without preamble. The syndicate knows she's here. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Mira's hand found Sebastian's automatically, their fingers intertwining. I felt my heartbeat kick up, fear flooding back in a rush. How? Sebastian demanded. Someone at the auction talked. Word spread fast. There's a new player in town, someone powerful enough to drop $1 million without blinking, and he took the girl who was supposed to go to Marcus Vane. Cole's eyes flicked to me, something like pity in their depths. Vane isn't happy. He's claiming breach of contract, saying he'd already made arrangements to purchase Lot 17 before Nathaniel outbid him. That's not how auctions work, Mira said hotly. Since when do men like Vane care about rules? Cole shot back. He wants her, and he's making noise about it. Loud noise. The kind that attracts attention Nathaniel doesn't need right now. I set down my fork carefully, my appetite gone. Who is Marcus Vane? The silence that followed was answer enough. When Sebastian finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. He's a businessman, owns half the real estate downtown, has connections to every criminal organization in the city, and enjoys collecting things, beautiful things. He paused. He's also human, which makes him dangerous in different ways than supernatural beings. We can't just eliminate him without causing a war with the human criminal underground. He wanted to buy me, I said slowly, the full horror of what I'd escaped finally sinking in. If Nathaniel hadn't shown up, don't think about that, Mira said firmly, squeezing my hand. You're here now. You're safe. Am I? I looked between the three of them. If this Vane person is making threats, if he's powerful enough that you're all worried, Nathaniel's more powerful, Cole interrupted. But there are politics involved. Alliances, territories, old agreements that prevent supernatural beings from interfering too obviously in human affairs. Vane knows this. He's betting Nathaniel won't start a war over one human girl. He'd be wrong, a deep voice said from the doorway. We all turned to find Nathaniel standing there, his presence filling the space instantly. He was dressed more casually than last night, dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, but he still radiated authority. His eyes found mine immediately, and I felt that pull again, that invisible thread connecting us. Elena is not one human girl, he continued, stepping into the kitchen. She's my mate. Anyone who threatens her threatens me, threatens this pack, and I don't care what political fallout follows. No one touches her. The absolute certainty in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, I felt something warm unfurl in my chest, something dangerously close to hope. Vane sent a message, Cole said, handing Nathaniel a phone. Wants to meet, discuss terms. Nathaniel's expression darkened as he read whatever was on the screen. He wants to buy her from me, offering $2 million. You're not seriously considering, I started, then stopped as Nathaniel's eyes snapped to mine. No, he said, the word absolute. I'm not. But I need to handle this carefully. Vane has allies, human and otherwise. If he decides to make this personal, if he starts investigating why I wanted you so badly. He trailed off, but the implication was clear. If Vane discovered I was Nathaniel's mate, if word spread through supernatural circles that the Alpha King had finally found his destined partner, I would become a target. Not just for Vane, but for anyone who wanted to hurt Nathaniel. Anyone who saw me as a weakness to exploit. So what do we do? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Nathaniel studied me for a long moment, something like respect dawning in his expression. We? Elena, you don't have to— I'm already involved, I interrupted. From the moment you paid for me, from the moment you told me what you are, what I apparently am to you, running won't help, will it? Hiding won't make me safer. No, he admitted. It won't. Then tell me the plan, I said, lifting my chin. Tell me how we handle this Marcus Vane problem. Because I'm not going to be some helpless damsel who needs protecting. If I'm really your mate, if I'm really part of this pack now, then I get a say in what happens next. Silence fell over the kitchen. Then slowly Nathaniel smiled. A real smile that transformed his entire face, making him look younger and somehow even more dangerous. I was right about you, he said softly. You're stronger than you know, and despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the impossible situation I'd found myself in, I felt myself smile back. Maybe I was stronger than I knew. Maybe I'd have to be, because something told me the real challenges were only just beginning. The meeting with Marcus Vane was set for neutral ground, a high-end restaurant downtown that catered to the city's elite, both human and otherwise. Nathaniel had explained that places like this operated under strict rules. No violence, no obvious displays of power, no breaking the carefully maintained illusion that humans were the only sentient species walking the earth. He'll try to intimidate you, Nathaniel warned as we prepared to leave. We were in his study, the same room where my world had been turned upside down just 24 hours ago. He'll make veiled threats, try to make you feel small and powerless. That's his method. Psychological warfare. Sounds familiar? I muttered, thinking of the auction house, of standing on that platform while men assessed my worth. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. If at any point you want to leave, just say the word. I can handle Vane alone. No. I straightened the dress Vivian had helped me choose. Elegant but not revealing. Expensive but not ostentatious. Navy blue that made my pale hair look almost silver. I need to face him. Need to see who I escape from. Something flickered in Nathaniel's eyes. Approval, maybe, or concern. You don't owe him anything, Elena. You don't need to prove anything to him or to me. Maybe not, I agreed, but I need to prove something to myself. The drive into the city was tense and silent. Nathaniel sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, but he didn't touch me, didn't push. Since this morning's revelation about Vane, he'd been careful to give me space, as if afraid one wrong move would send me running. What he didn't seem to understand was that I had nowhere to run to, and increasingly, I wasn't sure I wanted to run at all. Cole drove while James and Sebastian followed in a second car, back up, though Nathaniel had insisted they'd wait outside. This is a diplomatic meeting, he'd said. Showing up with an army would be seen as aggression. And showing up with your mate? I'd asked. Shows him exactly where my priorities lie. The restaurant was everything I'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, pristine white tablecloths, prices on the menu that would have paid my rent for 6 months. We were led to a private room in the back, where a man already sat waiting, a glass of wine in hand, and a smile on his face that made my skin crawl. Marcus Vane looked ordinary at first glance. Middle-aged, well-dressed, with graying hair, and the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him. But his eyes were cold, calculating. The eyes of someone who saw people as objects to be acquired and used. Mr. Frost, he said, standing with practiced courtesy. Thank you for agreeing to meet, and you must be the lovely Elena. His gaze swept over me, assessing, and I felt Nathaniel tense beside me, even more beautiful than I was led to believe. Mr. Vane, Nathaniel said, his voice carefully neutral as we took our seats across from him. His hand found mine under the table, a gentle pressure that grounded me. Please, call me Marcus. Vane settled back into his chair, completely at ease. I prefer to keep business discussions friendly. Wouldn't you agree? That depends on the business, Nathaniel replied. Of course. Vane took a sip of his wine. I'll be direct then. I had an arrangement with the auction house. Lot 17 was promised to me before the general bidding. Imagine my surprise when a last-minute bidder not only outbid me, but paid 10 times what I'd planned to offer. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Naturally, I was curious about who would place such value on a girl with no particular skills or connections. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from responding to that deliberate insult. Nathaniel's grip on my hand tightened fractionally. I placed value on a human being in a situation no one should be in, Nathaniel said evenly. I paid her debt and freed her. Seems straightforward to me. Does it? Vane leaned forward. See, I did some research on you, Mr. Frost. Wealthy businessman, owns several properties, keeps to himself. But here's what's interesting. No one seems to know where your money comes from. No family business, no corporate holdings, just wealth that appears from nowhere. His eyes glittered. Almost like you're hiding something. The threat was clear. Vane suspected Nathaniel wasn't entirely human, and if he kept digging, he might uncover truths that would put not just Nathaniel, but the entire supernatural community at risk. I'm a private person, Nathaniel said calmly. I'm sure you can understand the value of privacy, Marcus. After all, I hear you have several business ventures that wouldn't stand up well to scrutiny. Vane's smile hardened. Are you threatening me? I'm pointing out that we both have reasons to avoid unnecessary attention. Nathaniel's voice remained pleasant, but there was steel underneath. You want the girl. I'm telling you she's not available. Perhaps we can find some other arrangement that would satisfy your needs. What other arrangement could possibly compare? Vane's gaze slid back to me, and I forced myself to meet it without flinching. She's perfect. Young, educated. That particular combination of innocence and strength that's so rare. I've been looking for someone like her for a very long time. The way he said it made bile rise in my throat. This was a man who collected people, who enjoyed breaking them down, who saw kindness as weakness to exploit. And I'd come so close to belonging to him. She's not for sale, I said, speaking for the first time. Both men turned to look at me. I'm not anyone's property, not yours, not his, not anyone's. Nathaniel paid my debt out of kindness, but I'm not an object to be traded between men like a used car. Vane's eyebrows rose. She has spirit. I like that. He turned back to Nathaniel. 3 million. Final offer. No amount of money will change my answer, Nathaniel said. And there was something in his voice now, something that made the temperature in the room drop several degrees. Elena is under my protection. That's not negotiable. Everything is negotiable, Mr. Frost. Vane set down his wine glass with careful precision. I'm trying to be civilized about this, but I'm not a man who accepts no easily. One way or another, I get what I want. The question is whether you're going to be reasonable, or if we need to do this the hard way. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Vane stood, buttoning his jacket. You have 48 hours to reconsider. After that, I'll be forced to take measures you won't enjoy. I have friends in many places, Mr. Frost. Law enforcement, government, media. It would be unfortunate if your private life suddenly became very public. He was gone before either of us could respond, leaving behind a tension so thick I could barely breathe. Nathaniel sat motionless for a moment, his hand still holding mine, his expression unreadable. He's going to come after us, I said quietly. Isn't he? Yes. Nathaniel finally looked at me, and the fury in his eyes was barely contained. But he has no idea what he's actually threatening. The rules that prevent me from simply eliminating him, they only apply if we're keeping our existence secret. If he forces our hand, if he pushes too far and risks exposing what we are, he trailed off. But the implication was clear. You'd kill him. I'd do whatever necessary to protect you. To protect the pack. He released my hand and stood, offering it to help me up. Come on. We need to get you somewhere safer than this. The drive back was faster, more urgent. Cole had clearly been briefed on how the meeting went because his expression was grim as he navigated through traffic. When we finally pulled through the gates of Nathaniel's estate, I felt myself relax slightly. At least here. Surrounded by werewolves who claimed I was family, I felt less exposed. The others were waiting in the main hall. Vivian, Sebastian, Mira, James, and several people I hadn't met yet. All of them looked tense, ready for action. He threatened us, Nathaniel announced without preamble. Threatened to expose our existence if I don't hand over Elena. That's a death sentence for him, Vivian said flatly. The council won't allow a human to blackmail an Alpha King. They'll authorize elimination. The council? I asked. The governing body for supernatural beings in North America, Sebastian explained. They maintain the laws that keep us hidden, that prevent wars between species. Breaking those laws, especially threatening exposure, is one of the few offenses punishable by immediate termination. So you'll just kill him? My voice sounded small even to my own ears. If necessary, Nathaniel said, his eyes finding mine. Elena, I know this is difficult to hear, but Vane isn't just threatening us. If he exposes the supernatural world, thousands of lives are at risk. Wolves, vampires, witches, all of us. We've maintained peace by staying hidden. If that secrecy breaks, if humans learn we exist and panic, he shook his head. It would be catastrophic. I understood the logic. Really, I did. But the thought of someone dying because of me, even someone like Vane, made my stomach churn. There has to be another way, I said. Something that doesn't end in violence. Elena, Nathaniel started. Please, I looked around at all of them, these powerful beings who could probably tear a human apart without breaking a sweat. I know I'm new to this world. I know I don't understand all the rules and politics. But I'm asking you to try. Try to find another solution before resorting to ending a life. The room was silent. Then Vivian stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. What if we give him what he thinks he wants? Absolutely not, Nathaniel growled. Not Elena, Vivian clarified quickly. But what if we make Vane believe he's won? Stage something that makes him think Elena chose to leave on her own, that she doesn't want Nathaniel's protection anymore. He'd never believe that, James said skeptically. Not after Nathaniel paid $1 million for her. He might, if she tells him herself. Vivian looked at me. What if you contacted Vane, told him you'd been coerced, that you want to negotiate your own freedom? Lead him somewhere we control, somewhere we can... Convince him that pursuing you is a very bad idea, without actually harming him. You want to use her as bait, Cole said, his tone disapproving. I want to give her what she asked for. A solution that doesn't end in death. Vivian's gaze remained on me. But only if you're willing, Elena. Only if you're brave enough to face him one more time. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to let these warriors handle the threat the way they knew best. But I thought about my father, about how he'd taught me that violence should always be the last resort, that compassion and cleverness could often achieve what force could not. I'll do it, I heard myself say. Tell me what you need me to do. Nathaniel made a sound low in his throat, almost a growl. No, it's too dangerous. Everything's dangerous now, I countered, turning to face him. The moment you walked into that auction house, the moment you claimed me as your mate, my life stopped being safe. At least this way, I'm choosing to act instead of just reacting. He stared at me for a long moment, emotions warring across his face, fear, frustration, and something that looked almost like pride. Finally, he nodded. If we do this, we do it my way. Full protection, every contingency planned, and the moment anything goes wrong, we extract you immediately. Agreed, I said, though my hands were shaking. Then let's plan, Vivian said, a fierce smile crossing her face. Let's show Marcus Vane exactly what happens when you threaten a Pax Luna. Luna? I echoed. The Alpha's mate. Mira explained gently. The queen to his king. Whether you've accepted the bond yet or not, Elena, that's what you are to us, and we protect our own. Looking around at their faces, determined, loyal, ready to fight for me even though I'd known them less than 2 days, I felt something shift inside my chest. Maybe I wasn't just a girl who'd sold herself to save her father. Maybe I was someone who could be strong enough, brave enough to belong in this strange new world. Maybe I was becoming someone I'd never imagined I could be. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a terrible thing. The abandoned warehouse district at the edge of the city smelled like rust and old rain. It was the kind of place where deals went bad and bodies disappeared, where the normal rules of society didn't quite reach, which made it perfect for what we had planned. I stood in the center of the main floor, surrounded by shadows and the skeletal remains of machinery that hadn't operated in decades. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I prepared to make the call that would set everything in motion. Around me, invisible in the darkness, Nathaniel's pack waited, strategic positions covering every entrance, every possible escape route. You don't have to do this, Nathaniel said quietly. He stood closest to me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, see the tension in every line of his body. Even now we can call it off, find another way. We've been over this, I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. This is the best option, the one that keeps everyone safe, everyone except you. I looked up at him then, really looked at him. In the 3 days since the restaurant meeting, since I'd agreed to this plan, I'd spent nearly every moment with Nathaniel and his pack, training sessions where Vivian taught me basic self-defense, strategy meetings where we'd gone over every detail, quiet evenings where I'd learned about werewolf culture, about what it meant to be a Luna, about the weight of the bond that connected us whether I acknowledged it or not. And through it all, Nathaniel had been patient, kind. Nothing like the dangerous predator I'd feared that first night. He'd shown me his world without demanding I become part of it, had protected me without making me feel weak, had looked at me like I was something precious and rare. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being terrified of him, and started being terrified of how much I was beginning to care. "I'm safer than you think," I told him. "I've got an alpha king and his entire pack watching my back. Most people don't get that kind of security." His lips twitched, almost a smile. Most people aren't foolish enough to deliberately walk into danger. Or brave enough. Vivian's voice came through the small earpiece I wore. "Stop trying to talk her out of it, Nathaniel. She's made her choice. Respect it." Nathaniel's hand reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face in a gesture that had become familiar over the past days. "When this is over," he said softly, "when you're safe, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have said from the beginning." My heart stuttered in my chest. "Tell me now." "No. After. When you can't accuse me of trying to manipulate you into this insanity." His thumb traced my cheekbone, the touch gentle despite the calluses on his hand. "Make the call, Elena. Let's end this." I dialed Marcus Vane's number with fingers that only trembled slightly. He answered on the second ring, his voice smooth and unsurprised. "Elena, I was hoping you'd reach out." "I need to talk to you," I said, letting fear color my words. Not hard, since I was genuinely afraid. Without Nathaniel knowing, without his people watching. "Has he hurt you?" Vane asked, and he actually sounded concerned. It would have been touching if I didn't know what kind of man he really was. I knew he was dangerous. "Where are you?" "I'll send people immediately." "No," I said quickly. "No one else, just you. I'll send you an address. Come alone. Please. I need to know I can trust you before I let my voice break slightly, before I agree to anything." The silence stretched long enough that I thought he might refuse. Then, "Send me the address. I'll be there in 20 minutes. And Elena, you're making the right choice." The call ended. I lowered the phone, my hand shaking for real now. "He's coming." "Predictable," Sebastian muttered from somewhere in the darkness. "Arrogant men always think they're smarter than everyone else." "Everyone in position," Nathaniel commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Remember, we don't harm him unless he forces our hand. The goal is intimidation, not elimination." "And if he doesn't scare easily?" Cole asked. "Then we escalate until he does." The next 20 minutes felt like hours. I paced the warehouse floor, rehearsing my lines, trying to calm my racing heart. Nathaniel stayed close, a silent presence that somehow made me feel both safer and more anxious. If this went wrong, if Vane brought people despite my instructions, if he figured out the trap before it was sprung. "Elena," Nathaniel's voice pulled me from my spiraling thoughts. "Breathe. You can do this. You're stronger than you know. You keep saying that, because it keeps being true." He caught my hand, pressing something into my palm. I looked down to find a small stone, smooth and warm. "It's been in my family for generations. We give them to people we trust, people we want to keep safe. Keep it with you. Let it remind you that you're not alone in this." I closed my fingers around it, feeling the weight of the gesture. This wasn't just a good luck charm, it was a symbol, a promise, a piece of his history that he was sharing with me. "Thank you," I whispered. "Car approaching," Vivian announced through the earpiece. "Single vehicle, 1 occupant. It's him." Nathaniel squeezed my hand once more, then melted back into the shadows. Suddenly I was alone in the center of the warehouse, illuminated by the pale moonlight streaming through broken windows. Alone, but not really. I could feel them around me, pack, protection, family I'd somehow acquired in less than a week. The warehouse door groaned open. Marcus Vane stepped inside, looking around cautiously before his eyes found me. He smiled, and it was almost genuine. "Elena, I'm glad you called." "Are you alone?" I asked, my voice echoing in the vast space. "As you requested." He moved closer, his footsteps careful. "Though I have to admit, this location is rather dramatic." "Worried about being followed?" "Nathaniel has people everywhere," I said, which was true enough. I couldn't risk them finding out about this meeting. "Wise." Vane stopped a few feet away, studying me with those cold, calculating eyes. "You look well. Better than I expected, actually. Has Frost been treating you well?" "He's been—" I paused, choosing words carefully. "Overwhelming. Possessive. He says I'm special to him, that he has plans for me, but he won't explain what they are. I'm not a prisoner exactly, but I'm not free either. I hoped, maybe you could help me understand what's really going on." It was a risk, admitting I knew something was strange about Nathaniel. But it was also the truth Vane would find most believable, a confused girl caught up in supernatural politics she didn't understand. Vane's expression shifted, becoming almost sympathetic. "Elena, there are things about this city, about certain people that are difficult to explain. Nathaniel Frost is not what he appears to be. Neither are the people who surround him." "What do you mean?" "I mean they're dangerous, inhuman, in some very literal ways." He took another step closer. "But you don't have to be afraid. I have resources. Protection. I can keep you safe from them, help you start a new life somewhere they'll never find you. All you have to do is trust me." "Trust you to do what?" I asked. "What would you want in return?" His smile widened. "Nothing you wouldn't freely give. Companionship, loyalty, the pleasure of your company. I'm not a monster, Elena, despite what Frost may have told you. I simply appreciate beautiful, intelligent women. And you are both." The way he said it made my skin crawl. This was a man who wrapped his cruelty in courtesy, who convinced himself that what he took was freely given. He was dangerous precisely because he believed his own lies. "Show me," I said suddenly. "Show me you can protect me. Because Nathaniel, his people, they're not normal. They're stronger, faster. If you really know what they are, prove it." Vane's eyes narrowed slightly. "What exactly did you see?" "Enough to know they're not entirely human," I replied, gambling that he'd already suspected as much. "And if you want me to trust you, I need to know you understand what we're dealing with." For a long moment, Vane just stared at me. Then he laughed, the sound devoid of real humor. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for." "Yes, Elena. I know what Frost is, what his people are. Werewolves, hiding in plain sight, pretending to be civilized while their beast nature lurks just beneath the surface." He moved closer still, close enough now that I could smell his cologne. "And yes, I can protect you from them. I have weapons, methods, allies who specialize in handling supernatural threats. You'll be perfectly safe with me, will I?" I asked quietly. "Or will I just be trading one cage for another?" His hand shot out, gripping my arm hard enough to bruise. The mask of civility cracked, revealing the predator underneath. "Ungrateful little—" He never finished the sentence. Nathaniel materialized from the shadows like an avenging ghost, his hand closing around Vane's wrist with enough force that I heard bones creak. "Let her go." Vane's face went white as he suddenly found himself surrounded. Sebastian and Cole emerged from the darkness, cutting off escape routes. Vivian, James, and Mira appeared from other positions, forming a circle. They didn't look entirely human anymore. Eyes glowing in the darkness, movements too fluid, too predatory. "What is this?" Vane gasped, trying and failing to break Nathaniel's grip. "Elena, you set me up? I gave you a chance to walk away," I said, stepping back and rubbing my arm where he'd grabbed me. "But you couldn't help yourself, could you? You saw something you wanted and decided it was yours to take." Nathaniel forced Vane to his knees with casual strength. "You made a mistake, Marcus. You threatened what's mine. You tried to use knowledge of our existence as leverage. And worst of all—" His eyes flashed silver, his canines lengthening slightly. "You put your hands on my mate. You can't kill me. Vane said, but his voice shook. If I disappear, people will ask questions. I have lawyers, associates, fail-safes. Who said anything about killing you? Vivian asked pleasantly. We're not savages, Marcus. We're just going to make sure you understand exactly how badly you've miscalculated. What happened next was carefully choreographed intimidation. Cole shifted partially, letting Vane see the wolf beneath the man. Sebastian demonstrated strength by bending a steel support beam with his bare hands. Mira's eyes glowed golden as she explained, in excruciating detail, exactly what the pack could do to someone who threatened their Luna. Through it all, Nathaniel held Vane in place, his grip unbreakable, his expression cold. Here's what's going to happen, he said finally. You're going to forget about Elena. You're going to stop investigating me and mine. You're going to take your business interests and focus them anywhere except where they might intersect with supernatural affairs. He leaned closer. Because if you don't, if you so much as whisper her name again, I will stop being civilized. I will stop following the rules. And you will discover exactly how terrifying a werewolf can be when protecting his mate. Are we clear? Vane nodded frantically, all his earlier arrogance gone. Clear. Yes. I'll leave her alone. Leave all of you alone. Just please, go, Nathaniel said, releasing him. And remember, we know where you are. Always. We can find you anywhere. There is no place you can hide if you break this agreement. Vane scrambled to his feet and ran, his footsteps echoing through the warehouse as he fled into the night. We listened until the sound of his car engine faded into the distance. Then, finally, the tension broke. Well, Sebastian said cheerfully. That was satisfying. He'll keep his word, Vivian predicted. Men like that, once you strip away their confidence, they stay stripped. He's too afraid now to do anything but comply. And if he doesn't? I asked. Then we escalate, Cole said simply. But I don't think we'll need to. He's broken. I should have felt triumphant, should have been celebrating the fact that we'd found a solution without anyone dying, that the threat was neutralized. Instead, I just felt tired, the adrenaline draining away and leaving me hollow. Nathaniel appeared at my side, his expression concerned. Elena? Are you all right? Did he hurt you? I'm fine, I assured him, though my arm still throbbed where Vane had grabbed me. Just processing. Let's get you home, he said gently, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Home, he'd said, not his house, not the estate. Home, as if that's what it had become. The ride back was quiet, everyone exhausted from the tension. I leaned against Nathaniel, letting his warmth seep into my bones, and thought about everything that had changed in just 1 week. A week ago, I'd been a desperate girl selling herself to save her father. Now I was part of a werewolf pack, claimed by an alpha king, brave enough to face down a dangerous man in an abandoned warehouse. When we finally arrived back at the estate, the others dispersed to their own spaces, leaving Nathaniel and me alone in the main hall. The silence stretched between us, heavy with things unsaid. You wanted to tell me something, I reminded him. After this was over, after I was safe, Nathaniel's eyes met mine, and I saw vulnerability there that took my breath away. I wanted to tell you that you have a choice. Always. The mate bond. It's powerful, real, but it doesn't force you to stay. If you want to leave, if you want your own life separate from all this supernatural chaos, I'll make sure you have it. Money, protection, whatever you need. Your father will be cared for. You'll never have to worry. But, I prompted, because I could hear it in his voice, but I'm hoping you'll stay. He moved closer, his hand reaching up to cup my face. Not because of the bond, not because you feel obligated, but because you want to. Because in the past week, I've watched you face impossible situations with grace and courage. I've watched you care for people you barely know, risk yourself for principles you believe in. And I've fallen completely, irrevocably, in love with the woman you are. My breath caught. Nathaniel, I know it's fast, he continued. I know you probably need time, space to figure out what you want. But I need you to know that you're not just my mate, Elena. You're the person I want to build a life with. The person I want beside me, not because destiny says so, but because I choose you. And I'm hoping, maybe you might choose me too. I thought about the past week, about Vivian's kindness and Sebastian's humor, about Mira's friendship and Cole's protective gruffness, about how this strange, supernatural family had welcomed me without hesitation, about how Nathaniel had given me respect, space, protection, and trust, about how, somewhere along the way, I'd stopped feeling like a victim and started feeling like a warrior. "I'm not who I was a week ago," I said finally. "That girl who stood on the auction platform, she's gone. I don't know exactly who I'm becoming, but I know I'm different now." "I know," Nathaniel said softly, "and I love who you're becoming even more than who you were." I reached up, placing my hand over his where it still cupped my face. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Scared of how fast this is moving. Scared of this world I don't fully understand. Scared of how much I already care about you. About all of you." "Fear is healthy," he murmured. "It means you understand the risks, the stakes. But Elena, don't let fear stop you from living, from loving." Looking into his eyes, I saw patience and hope and a love so fierce it should have terrified me. Maybe it did, a little, but I also saw home, purpose. A future I'd never imagined but suddenly wanted with an intensity that defied logic. "Ask me," I whispered. His brow furrowed. "Ask you what?" "Ask me to stay. Not as your mate, not as your Luna, not because of bonds or destiny. Ask me to stay because you want me here." Understanding dawned in his expression. "Elena Winters," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Will you stay? Will you build a life here, with me, with this pack? Will you let me love you, protect you, stand beside you as you become whoever you're meant to be?" I thought about my father, recovering in a hospital room, safe and healthy for the first time in years. Thought about the freedom Nathaniel was offering. The choice to leave, to start over, to pretend none of this had ever happened. And then I thought about how it felt to be part of something larger than myself. To be valued not for what I could give, but for who I was. To be seen, truly seen, by someone who looked at me like I was worthy of love. "Yes," I said, and felt the rightness of it settle into my bones. "I'll stay." Nathaniel's face transformed, his smile bright enough to rival the sun. He pulled me close, his arms wrapping around me like he'd never let go. "Thank you," he breathed against my hair. "Thank you for choosing us, choosing me." "Thank you for finding me," I replied, my arms sliding around his waist, "for saving me, for seeing past what I was to what I could become." He pulled back just enough to look down at me, his expression tender. "May I kiss you?" In answer, I rose up on my toes and closed the distance between us. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if we both feared breaking the spell, but then something shifted. The bond between us flaring to life, the connection deepening, and the kiss became more. A promise, a claiming, a future written in the space between heartbeats. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I saw my future reflected in his eyes. A future of challenges and dangers, of supernatural politics and pack dynamics, of learning to be someone I'd never imagined. But also a future of love and belonging, of purpose and strength, of finally finding the place I was meant to be. "Welcome home, Luna," Nathaniel whispered, and standing there in his arms, surrounded by the warmth of his pack and the promise of tomorrow, I finally believed it. I was home. Epilogo. Seis meses después. The autumn sun streamed through the windows of my father's new house, a modest place in a quiet neighborhood, paid for by Nathaniel, but chosen by Dad himself. I sat at his kitchen table, watching him move around with an energy I hadn't seen in years, his heart healthy, his color good. "You look different," he said, setting down tea in front of me. "Happy, really happy." "I am," I admitted. And it was true. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of adjustment, learning pack dynamics, understanding my role as Luna, discovering that I had a gift for mediating disputes that made me invaluable to Nathaniel's work. I'd gone back to finish my degree, this time studying supernatural law, a field I'd never known existed. I'd made friends, found purpose, built a life I loved. "This Nathaniel," Dad said carefully. "He treats you well?" "Better than well, Dad. He treats me like an equal, a partner." I smiled, thinking of my mate, who was currently in meetings with the council but would be waiting for me when I got home. "He loves me, and I love him." Dad studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Then I'm happy for you, sweetheart. After everything you did for me, you deserve happiness." "We both deserve it," I corrected. "And we both have it now." As I drove back to the estate that evening, past the gates that opened automatically, past the gardens where pack members trained and laughed and lived, I thought about the girl I'd been 6 months ago. Desperate, terrified, convinced she was sacrificing everything. She'd had no idea she was actually finding everything. Nathaniel was waiting on the front steps, his face lighting up the moment he saw me. I parked and ran to him, launching myself into his arms as he spun me around, both of us laughing like children. "How's your father?" he asked when he set me down. "Wonderful. Happy, asking when we're going to give him grandchildren." Nathaniel's eyebrows shot up. "And what did you tell him?" "That we're still enjoying being newlyweds," I replied, touching the simple band on my finger. "We'd married quietly last month, just Pack and a few close friends. But maybe, someday soon?" The hope that flared in his eyes made my heart swell. "Yeah?" "Yeah," I confirmed, pulling him down for a kiss. From somewhere inside, I heard Vivian shout, "They're being disgustingly cute again." "Get used to it," Sebastian called back. "They're always like this." I laughed against Nathaniel's mouth, and he smiled back. And somewhere in the distance, the sun set over our home, our pack, our family, our future. I'd sold myself to save my father, and accidentally found my destiny. Not a bad trade, all things considered.